I'm Bartholomew, 13 years old. Accidentally cracked open my brother's head, and I'm clueless on how to fix it. Mom and Dad shipped us out so they could chat with some ugly suit guy about what to do with Pop's cash now that he's gone. Dad's fuming caused Pop blew all his money on horse racing, and now there's nothing left for us. Dad mentioned he's happy Pop's gone. I didn't buy it. Joel and I were hanging out at the pit. It's in the woods on the city's edge. There are two massive tunnels sticking out from the bottom of a hill, splashing water when it's been raining hard. Underneath the tunnels, there's a big gap. All the things the water swiped from the city end up there. In the summer, it's usually pretty dry, and you can find all sorts of things: license plates, bike helmets, Happy Meal toys. Last year, we even stumbled upon a cat, but it was already gone. We play like we're pirates on a treasure hunt. I know it's kind of silly, but it keeps Joel grinning. He's only 10. The other kids in his class call him Moley Joel because he looks like a mole. Small, with round glasses and big buck teeth. He hates that name, and so do I. I always just called him Joel. We were on the plank, a long piece of plywood sticking out over the pit, just like a pirate ship. Joel had his turn to walk the plank. I played the captain, brandishing my sword, a window wiper, and commanding him to follow my orders, addressing me as captain for the rest of the day. You can only step off the plank if you do what the captain says. That's the deal. It's my shot at being the captain, he complained, shaking his head as he moved away from me and down the plank. I never get to be the captain. I swung the wiper back and forth, saying, you need to be strong to be a captain. Joel stomped his little foot, and the wood creaked. I am strong. I want to be the captain, he declared. His eyes teared up, which just fueled my frustration. He always cried to avoid trouble with Mom and Dad, and the blame fell on me. I swung the wiper harder, nudging Joel back toward the very edge of the plank. You can't, I told him. You can go later. I don't want to play then, he declared, wobbling on the spot. Tears streamed down his chubby cheeks. Address me as captain, I yelled. No, he retorted. He sprinted towards me. The unexpected surge of bravery caught me off guard. I hadn't anticipated him doing something that foolish. The wiper lashed across his cheek with a resounding thwack. The impact spun Joel's head, and his body followed suit. A soft whimper escaped as his hand clutched his face. His left foot slipped off the plank. Then he vanished. The quiet was unbearable. No shouts or wails, just the gentle breeze whispering through the trees. It felt like he had sprouted wings and soared into the sky. Joel hit the ground with a moist thud. Thorns and nettles clawed at my skin as I sprinted down the hill. My thighs buzzed with welts and cuts. Tears clung to my face. I never meant to harm him. You gotta trust me. It was a single foolish slip, an unintended mishap, I promise. He was sprawled on his back, right in the center of the pit. His descent had been cushioned by decaying bags of garbage. Some burst open, spewing out containers from takeout and half-eaten kebabs. Maggots moved about like miniature adventurers. Joel's head leaned on a hefty concrete block protruding from the mess. His eyes were wide open, fixed on the darkening skies. His mouth moved, mimicking a goldfish, yet no sound escaped. A trickle of red made its way down the concrete block and into the dirt. I fell to my knees next to him. I wiped my nose with my hand and poked his ribs. Alive, please, I pleaded. Boo, Joel mumbled, his lips twisting in different directions. All right, come on, gotta move, I urged, offering a feeble grin. If I downplayed the fall, maybe Joel would too. His head lolled to the side, and his arms went slack. A prolonged, monotone moan escaped him. His eyes remained open, tracking the sun disappearing behind dark clouds. I leaned in, shaking his shoulder. Please, I pleaded. Joel smacked his lips together, his gaze coming back into focus. Captain, he rasped. I grinned. He was still kicking. It hurts, he said. Where? Everywhere. I raised his head, lifting it off the concrete block. Thick red strands dripped down his hair. and Joel whimpered while pulling himself upright. "You good, huh?" I questioned, forcing another anxious smile. He stared at me blankly, wincing as if he had momentarily forgotten who I was. Eventually, his gaze softened, and he grinned. "I guess," he replied. "My bad," I apologized. Taking off my beanie, I draped it over his head, tucking his wet hair into the back. "You're the captain now," I declared. His right eye blinked, then his left. It was a minor mishap, a knock on the noggin. No reason to spill the beans to Mom and Dad, especially Dad. He'd flip out, wreck the joint, and we'd both be in hot water. We both understood we shouldn't be there. Gotta hush this up. If Joel's still feeling off tomorrow, I'll sneak him to the school nurse. That's the deal we made as we strolled back home for dinner. Joel stayed silent. He seemed drained. His expression was vacant, mouth slightly open, gaze fixed straight ahead. His forehead wrinkled, like he couldn't grasp what was going on. Yet, when I gave him a comforting pat on the back, he managed a soft smile. By the time we reached home, the sun had dipped behind the trees, throwing long shadows that intersected over our house. We slipped in, cautiously gauging the atmosphere before making our presence known. The small TV in the dining room blared a cricket match between England and Australia. England was lagging behind. Dad's mood was bound to be sour. He sat at the dining table, eyes glued to the TV like a lion eyeing its prey. On the table lay pamphlets titled Information for Grieving Families and Unraveling Inheritance Tax. "Yo," I mumbled. A racket of clanging metal echoed from the kitchen, and the three of us startled. "For crying out loud, Marie," Dad snapped. "My bad," Mom's shaky response. He grunted, eyes glued to the TV. Mom was always the peacemaker. "Where you at?" Dad inquired, still avoiding eye contact. "Hanging in the park," I replied, trying to keep it cool. Dad jerked his head my way, a reminder of the intensity in his eyes. I cautiously positioned myself in front of Joel. Dad's eyes tracked my movement, grappling with the decision on what to do next. Did he buy my story? Was it worth his time to probe deeper? "Boundary," hollered the commentator from the TV. Dad swiveled back. England scored a 4. He emitted a contented hiss, kicking the chair in front of him and taking another swig of his beer. "Set the table," Mom's shout echoed. Joel staggered toward the chest of drawers, talking to himself. He swayed with each step, as if navigating a boat in a storm. A sharp pang of panic shot up my spine. Commercials popped up on the telly, so Dad flipped the channel. A picture of Pop Pop took over the screen. The news anchor mentioned that the police were still after those responsible. There had been a policewoman spending a lot of time at our place, chatting with Mom and Dad, especially Dad. She wasn't like those hunters in movies, the ones tackling a lion or an elephant. She seemed more like a tired zombie with coffee breath. "I wish they'd just give up," Dad muttered to no one in particular. "Don't say that. They'll find him," Mom replied, firm yet composed. I observed Joel setting the table as he did every night. Except tonight, he was all mixed up. Knives were where forks should be, and forks were upside down in the middle of the mat. Cups teetered on the edge, threatening to tumble and shatter, which would set Dad off. Joel moved strangely, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the floor. I laid my hand on his arm, steering him away from Dad. His skin felt cold and damp, resembling spilled milk. "What are you up to?" I questioned. "Pop Pop is here," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Huh?" I responded, behind the lamp. Quit playing dumb. Though I was apprehensive about what I might find, I risked a glance. The space was vacant. "No one's there," I declared. The light flickered slightly. "He's grinning, but it gives me the creeps," Joel shouted, his voice suddenly escalating. "Who?" inquired Dad. His eyes shifted to the chaos on the table. "Stop fooling around and do what you're told," he bellowed. I restored everything to its proper place. Joel pleaded to take my seat, avoiding eye contact with Pop Pop's black eyes. As he maneuvered past, I glimpsed the back of his head. A murky octopus seemed to have taken residence inside the beanie, but the blood hadn't trickled down his neck. Perhaps it had formed a scab. Perhaps it wasn't as severe. Maybe everything was going to be all right. "He's eager to return," Joel murmured as I strolled by. His fingers crept to the back of his head and beneath the beanie. I smacked his arm. "Quit messing with it," I said. "You're just going to make it worse." Mom brought out dinner. Dad tried to say a prayer for Pop Pop, but he ran out of words. He just kept saying sorry over and over. After a while, the sorry turned into crying. His body shook as he wailed, cursing Pop Pop, God, and everyone in between. This happened a lot since the funeral. The rest of us usually watched him in silence. But this time, Joel chimed in. He made a sound between a cry and a scream. His big eyes were on me, a little scared kid. Dad leaned over and grabbed Joel's hands, holding them tight with love. Joel always got their love. It didn't stop his screaming. Peeking past Joel, I caught sight of the lamp. I tried to conjure up an image of Pop Pop crouched behind it, grinning at me, eyes resting beneath plump lids, the creases in his face contorting into a smile, lips stretching toward the sky. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing there. Yet Joel continued to scream. So did Dad. They both hollered like frightened little kids. Only Joel's expression wasn't sorrowful. It was pure terror. Drool hung from his chin. Mum had ceased her tears, focusing her gaze on Joel with worry. She sensed something was amiss. I pushed away from the table. "Cut it out," I hollered. "Quit bawling like some dumb." I was well aware I'd screwed up before Dad propelled himself from his chair, charging toward me. For a hefty guy, he moved fast. His booming steps sent the utensils trembling on the table. He jutted out his belly as he loomed over me, eclipsing the light from the lamp. "Say the rest," he ordered. I messed up, and the consequences were coming. He had the reason he wanted, and we were both aware of it. I shook my head, clamping my lips over my teeth. Arguing back only escalated things. He smacked me across the face with the back of his hand. The lamp burst, scattering fragments of glass throughout the room. Darkness enveloped everything. A prolonged hush ensued, and in the blackness, I cradled my cheek. Pain reverberated through my jaw, setting my teeth on edge. From the far end of the room, Joel let out a soft whimper. At least his crying had ceased. "Go to your room, both of you," Mum's voice echoed, disappearing as swiftly as it had arrived. Dad maintained his silence in the obscurity. Memories of Pop Pop's final breath in the hospital flashed before me. It was angry, laden with phlegm. I didn't want that image, but Dad insisted on a photo for the evening news. I stood beside the old man, broken and coughing up blood from the brutal assault he endured. A failed burglary, nothing stolen, just an old man battered to death with a bat. I nearly wet myself. While Dad dealt with the reporter, Pop Pop gurgled something to me. "No way." He kicked the bucket shortly after. As I escorted Joel upstairs, his labored breath echoed in my ears. Prolonged and bubbling, akin to a boiling kettle. It emanated from the room's corner, right by the lamp. However, when Mum flicked the main light on, Pop Pop was nowhere to be seen, just shattered glass. When we got to our room, Joel was shaking. Mumbling to himself, he lurched toward the room's center, where an old office chair, a gem from the pit, sat. He awkwardly sank into it, his posture stiff, like he'd forgotten how to sit. "Pop Pop's gone, no need to stress," I remarked. "Not worried," Joel muttered. The chair emitted a squeak as he turned it slowly toward me. "He ain't here for me or you," he explained. "What's that mean?" I inquired. Joel slouched deeper into the chair, almost sprawled across it. "We gotta lend a hand," he declared, like proper kippers. My heart skipped a beat. Kippers was the nickname Pop Pop used for us. Joel always despised it since the scent of fish turned his stomach. Pop Pop thought it was a riot. The room's light flickered, casting Joel in shadows. His face, hit by light at odd angles, morphed into different shapes. It ceased to be his familiar chubby face. It became sharp, angular, wrinkled. It grinned at me. Suddenly, Joel's original face returned. I felt a surge of heat, my clothes clinging to my skin, and a nauseating sensation overcame me. "My head's itchy," Joel remarked. His fingers slithered under the beanie, weaving through strands of hair. His eyes remained fixed on me. "Cut it out," I warned, but it was too late. Joel's fingers emerged, smeared with blood, holding a squirming maggot. A grin spread across his face. His left eye twitched, followed by the right. "Mom!" she hollered from the landing. "Get over here, Bart." I glanced at the door, then back at Joel. If I stuck around, Mum would enter, and I'd be in deep trouble. If I split, Joel might unleash who knows what. He observed the maggot, holding it close to his eyes, letting it crawl across his glasses. His agitation seemed to subside. I convinced myself he was just weary. The pit was teeming with maggots. It wasn't a shocker one found its way into his beanie. I could fix this. All I needed was a bowl and a sponge, and I could have Joel cleaned up by morning. Everything would be all right. I exited the room. On her bed's edge, Mum sat, gripping 2 bowls of mashed veggies. She grinned. The furious yelling had been a performance. "Don't spill to your dad," she murmured, passing me the bowls. Leaning closer, her face loomed in my view. Her thumb gently traced my cheek. It stung briefly, then settled into a dull ache. "Your dad's dealing with a lot," she whispered, her voice low and melancholic. A soft thud echoed. Its origin eluded me. Perhaps it was Dad still making a ruckus. Or perhaps it was Joel. I needed to return. "He's just talking, you know," Mum reassured. "I get it," I replied, glancing at the door. My words felt empty. I anticipated her plea downplay the incident, keep it hush-hush among my buddies. In this neighborhood, gossip spreads like wildfire, and it could stir up all sorts of problems. Our family was a vault of hidden truths, and I'd mastered the art of burying the darkest ones. Like Mum's daytime pal, Ricky, or the moment I stumbled upon Dad in the bathtub, tears streaming, clutching a bloodied cricket bat. I pretend to forget these things. It's quite manageable with some practice. Frustration and nervousness propelled me toward the door. But Mum gently held my chin, crouched down, and fixed her gaze on mine. "Thanks for looking out for Joel," she said, slipping a $5 into my shirt and grinning. "For your next escapade." The words Joel might be hurt hovered on the tip of my tongue. I locked them away, tightly clamped behind my gritted teeth. It took all I had to resist the urge to collapse into her, sobbing against her worn blondie t-shirt. It was an accident. No one's fault. Dad doesn't need to be informed, right? Well, he does, you fool. He'll find out, and there'll be hell to pay. I've harmed his favorite kid. How severely? I didn't know. I didn't want anyone to find out. I was going to fix this. Everything was going to be all right. I nodded, keeping my mouth sealed, molding my lips into a smile. "You good?" she inquired. I was teetering on the brink of tears, but I clenched my eyes shut, affirming with a nod as I scurried toward the door. Mum remained silent as I exited the room. I staggered through the hallways to the bedroom, struggling to keep myself upright. It felt like the house was being tossed around in the ocean. My stomach was a mix of seawater and maggots. Gripping the door handle, I prayed to discover my brother inside. No beanie, no maggots, just him. Upon entering the bedroom, I nearly retched. The air hung heavy with a moist tang, simultaneously dull and sharp. It slid down into my gut. The stench brought to mind the cat we stumbled upon at the pit a few months back. Its belly was open, devoured by some kind of creature. Joel's gaze flicked in my direction. "Sorry, Bart. I messed with it," he confessed. He remained sprawled over the desk chair, his head tilted back over the arm, staring at the ceiling. The beanie was gone, revealing the damage I had inflicted. The back of his skull resembled a blossomed flower, with fragments of hair and bone hanging loosely over the chair. A thick stream of blood seeped from the wound, forming a crimson pool on the floor, creating a vivid red lake. It glimmered, its borders simmering and bursting. Whiffs of steam spiraled away from it. The blood seemed to boil. Emerging from the lake was a mangled figure with a half-formed face made of bone and gristle, sporting two intense eyes. The eyes locked onto me, and the meat man grinned. It was a familiar smile. "Hello, Kippers. Seen your dad around?" he inquired.